Welcome back, Truth Seekers from around the world. It's time for another edition of the Flat Earth Files podcast. I'm your host, as always, George Hobbs. We're recording on this Monday evening, March the 23rd, 2026. I hope this episode finds you well. We have a guest standing by. He is Matthew from Tennessee. Great name. My youngest son's name, Matthew. Before we do, just a quick reminder, please do take the time out and drop us an email. It is fefilesguest@gmail.com. Again, that is fefilesguest@gmail.com. We're booking for April. We have some slots that are still available, and we'd love to hear from you. There's lots of stories to tell. Listen, we're on interview, I think this is 252 or 253, and we're learning something new every day, so please do take the time, say hello, and come on and share your story. Without any further ado, we're bringing on Matthew from Tennessee. I think one of the most beautiful states in the country. Every time driving through there in the fall is just, it's amazing. So, Matthew, it's so nice to have you on the podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah. So I'm in Tennessee. I'm almost 34 years old. Let's see. I've moved around a lot. Grew up in Louisiana until I was about 12. Also some in Florida. And I'm the oldest of six. And my dad was actually a pastor in the Presbyterian church at first. And then he uprooted a whole family. We moved all the way over to England. And we lived in Durham for 6 years, where they have the huge cathedral and they filmed Harry Potter and everything. And then we moved to London for over 10 years, and then we converted to Roman Catholicism. That's a whole nother side tangent. And then COVID happened, and I had to basically sell everything and relocate back to America, and I ended up back in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And amidst all that, also, I met my wife, who's Canadian, and we had to do a bunch of stuff through there, fighting the government to be together as well. Now I'm basically here. I kind of lost myself in the 20s in terms of, with God and everything, and basically stumbling upon conspiracies. It kind of led me down the road closer and closer to what I now understand as biblical cosmology. And that's basically opened up everything. And now I'm a flat earther, as you'd say. So, yeah.
I'll tell you, Matthew, I've said this before, and I'll probably say it again another 20 times. Being a man and being in your 20s was a battle for me as well, especially, you grew up in the church and then all of a sudden you're free, air quotes, and you go out there and you kind of live a worldly way. And I was very lucky that I was given second chances and eventually found my wife, and she started, she played a large part of grounding me as well, to where that, I was today, George didn't care about tomorrow. George, let him deal with the problems tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you start to, mature and maybe I shouldn't do this. And, we've had people on in the churches who have programs for young men and women, between 18 and 24 to kind of keep them grounded. If you look at the numbers when these young folks go off to college, I think upwards of 60% of people I don't know whether you say turn their back on God, walk away from God, whatever the term is. I think that's very important. And I've mentioned that to a few pastors to kind of remember that, that age group, because that is very tricky for many people. And the other thing is you have so much worldly experience, and I think that might be part of the reason. I mean, you're only 34, but you have the wisdom of somebody who's probably, in their mid-50s, and that's because you have seen the world, not just grown up in one little town your whole life. I think you have much more perspective than some other folks do.
Yeah, I've come to realize that the older I get, just how much I've actually been through. I think my life has been so busy, where so much has always been happening. I haven't really given myself time to process it. But whenever I tell things to people, they're like, hold on, just wait a minute. They're just like, slow down. And I'm just kind of used to it by this point. But for sure, moving around all these different places, different cultures, different people, different backgrounds, it's really helped shape my thinking and understanding of what people believe and different parts of history as well, particularly. So yeah, it's definitely made me a thinker, so to speak, and I ended up doing philosophy in university anyway, so I kind of expanded it. So
What was it? COVID that really opened your eyes, or was there something prior to that that led you to kind of understand that things aren't as they seem or as we're told?
I'd say COVID was definitely someone just basically threw a bunch of TNT and gasoline over the fire that I was already burning inside me. Put it simply. But I'd say the very, very first thing that kind of woke me up was probably veganism. Back when I was in my early 20s, I decided to go vegan because I thought it was more moral, and I didn't have to consume animals to, be healthy and everything. And I thought that was the best thing for the environment and the planet and my health and all this stuff. I was vegan about 3.5 years, but that kind of hospitalized me about 11 times by the end of it. And my health took a massive toll, and I had to basically, no doctors would help me. They wouldn't tell me what to recommend to eat and everything. I had to do my own research, and I came across the carnivore diet, and that's the only thing I could eat for a year was beef, eggs, and butter, salt, and water, and that's the only thing that healed me from my condition. I got a bunch of problems with my digestion and everything, and had to do surgery and things. So,
wow,
yeah, that kind of sparked my first interest in terms of looking into research for my health as opposed to what the government was telling me to consume, because I don't know if you know, but in London, the plant-based agenda is humongous, and there's a huge cult of that. And that's kind of why I got sucked into that, because I thought it was good. It appears to be good, but it's not actually good for us. So, yeah, that was the starting point for me, was the health aspect of that. And that just kind of led to other things as I progressed in my life, because I started questioning, well, if they're not telling us the truth about our health, like what else are they not telling us? And then I started to realize it's pretty much everything. It's the fluoride in our water, it's the chemicals they put in our food, it's the stuff they spray in the sky above us. And I was like, well, what's this? Oh, chemtrails, contrails, what's all this about? And it just kept leading to one thing after another. And I don't know how many conspiracies I've been through now, but I kind of tell people I'm a conspiracist, not a conspiracy theorist, because I like to go into conspiracies that have already been proven. And then they're like, wait, that's the thing that's already happened? It's like, yeah, the definition is the government's already done it. That's what conspiracy actually is. So,
right.
but yeah, so.
That's interesting. Would you say it was from a lack of nutrients, or was it something more that there's something within the diet that you had that was overloading something?
I'd say everyone kind of reacts differently based on their body's needs, because I've been a personal trainer for over 10 years as well, and I was a PT at the time also. So I think my body's needs were a little bit more, they needed a lot more. So I was eating the 3,000 to 5,000 calories a day, even with the vegan diet, with just, fruits, vegetables, plants, legumes, seeds, beans, all the typical stuff you think you have to eat. But we're supposed to be having stuff in kind of balance, and not all on one side. Even the Bible talks about this, and I got brainwashed into thinking the Bible says we're supposed to be vegans too. It's like, we're not really in the Garden of Eden anymore, and man's destroyed everything, and meat is there for a reason. So yeah, it depends on your body's needs. But I basically learned animal sustenance is kind of a crucial component. There's a lot of things. There's like 5 or 6 things that you can't get on just fruits and vegetables and plants. Like, you have to have carnitine, taurine, and a bunch of other things. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I was basically losing lots of muscle tissue, body fat, losing hair, skin was bad, bleeding gums, digestive issues. And it just comes with the fact you're not getting what your body needs. Like, we need cholesterol for our brains. We need saturated animal fat for our tissues and everything. And I wasn't getting that. And I was working out every day, super busy. My body basically got burnt out, and I shut down. So, yeah.
Man, that's scary. And I've heard so many people, praise the carnivore diet. I've tried it a few times, and my problem is that my wife's European and she bakes bread all the time. I'm always going back to that. But what's the typical day like for you as far as the carnivore diet? Because I've had many people come on before and say that's, they are doing it. And there's a homesteader we watch. It healed his skin problem, and I haven't heard anything negative about it. Of course, like you said, there's no one magical elixir, no one diet that works for everyone. But for the folks who I've talked to, it's worked for them. What's a traditional day like for you?
So I'm not 100% strict carnivore. I only did that for a year and a half while I healed my gut and my body and got it to a stable homeostasis. And then after then, I've basically worked. So my wife's actually she's a natural practitioner, like a holistic naturopath. And that's how we kind of met. Another side tangent, because she found my photo on Instagram being in the hospital after a surgery of veganism, and she's also ex-vegan, and we started talking across the world, and now we're married. But
that's amazing.
But I'd say it's pretty much, I've learned whole foods is key. It's absolutely key. You need whole foods and natural sources as best as possible. It needs to be grass-fed, needs to be organic, raw, unpasteurized dairy, stuff like that. And so I basically will have 5 to 6 eggs with butter for breakfast, and lunch I'll have some rice and beef or rice and chicken, and then for dinner I'll have more beef or steak or some potatoes. I have some whole food potatoes as well, but I eat everything in the whole food form. I never eat anything unless going out sometimes. Typically I can get away with that now, but I still have to be really careful because my gut's not what it used to be. So it's pretty much what I eat. It's just beef, eggs, butter, some salmon, rice, potatoes, and some avocados, and minimal fruit and minimal vegetables that I can tolerate now. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who will try to play the Bible as veganism. If you look at 1 Timothy 4:4, Mark 7:18, for everything created by God is good, and nothing is to be rejected if it's received with thanksgiving. And the Lord put these things on the planet. I'm going to get it for that one, on Earth, for us to consume, for us to eat. And it's really interesting. What I was going to say was I was looking through Amazon because my wife was recently diagnosed with a thyroid issue. So she had to see a doctor, and they drew some blood, took some tests. But anytime we have an issue like that, we do our research. Doug and Stacy, we're big fans of them. My wife has old school homeopathic, remedies for this. And she did a research, and she found a thyroid support in liquid drops. It's selenium, zinc, iodine, tyrosine, and I'm going to say this wrong, ashwagandha. There it is.
Ashwagandha. Yeah.
And she took it for a month between her test and seeing the doctor today. And you could tell her swelling went down. She was feeling better. And she took it with her to see the doctor. This was this morning at 10:30. And he said, your numbers are so much better. But he still wanted to put her on this pill. I don't know what it was. Yeah, and she's like, but this is working fine. He's like, yeah, but understand, I can't recommend that because, he just continued. He was pushing. I need to put you on this pill. She says, why? You just said my numbers are better. I started taking this. You saw the numbers before. Why would you tell me to change something? And it was really interesting. These folks, whether it's the VA, whether it's a private doctor, listen, I don't know if they get paid because they prescribe something, they get a bonus, they get like a sales commission, but just, it didn't make any sense. If something is working, why would you recommend somebody to change something that's working, Matthew?
Yeah, well, that's always a $1 million question, but it always kind of goes back to following the money pretty much. I learned that with COVID big time. Yeah. So I've worked a bunch of jobs, but now I'm working, I won't say the name of the company. It's pretty big. And me and my wife both work there. She works in the place with clients, and I work in the warehouse, back of warehouse. But it's basically a place which is all natural, supplements, herbs, tinctures, homeopathics, basically everything anti-pharma. So I got big into this, and that's what she's into in her field. And the amount of like attack on natural healing in America alone is crazy. Like even in the state of Tennessee, it's illegal to practice. You can't really call yourself like a I forget the term, but you can get like a full-on qualification, close to a doctor, but for a natural person, like a naturopath, but then it's illegal to practice it in the state of Tennessee anyway. So you have to like word it differently and say, we can't say this will help you, but this is what we're going to give you based on a recommendation. And then it's legal and allowed. Like everything is about money. It's backed by the government of what they pay you to make you sick, and then to keep you in the system, to give you more pills, to give you more things, give you more side effects, and keep you in the loop. And then you're just stuck in there like a rat. So,
it's sad. In the late 1800s, before the turn of the century, there was still, and if the number's wrong, pardon me, I think we still had over 100 homeopathic hospitals in this country. And obviously we didn't have nearly as many hospitals as we did. Now there's a walk-in on every corner, etc. But then once the Flexner report came out and the Rockefellers started, buying up the medical industrial complex, all of that changed. And now to even just 10 years ago, of course, it had to happen this way. It was 2017. The FDA started cracking down on all these homeopathic medicines, and they started saying you had to do this, you had to do that. And of course, they did that 3 years prior to COVID. So when they came out and said you had to do this, they didn't want anybody to be able to say, well, what about this? They wanted to back people into a corner. And it was just 6 years ago, and thinking about how nefarious that whole timeline was, and you had mentioned it greatly affected you. This is probably a great time to segue into that and kind of tell us where you were, what you saw, how it went down, and how it changed you.
Sure. So, I could talk about this forever. So just cut me off if you need to, because I want to move to flat Earth as well. I know we don't have much time, but I was in London, UK at the time, and at first I'd say probably the first month I was kind of like, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. Everyone's freaking out. I'd say we had to get up about 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning just to go to the grocery store, and then wait probably 6-7 hours to get food. And we were lucky to get toilet paper. And that was that way for about a month. So that's just one aspect of it. Like, it was crazy. Like in the bigger cities, like London's the capital, during COVID, it was basically chaos all the time. And it was horrible. I didn't like it at all. The masks came out, all this stuff started happening, but the stuff they kept recommending to say us to do, like don't go outside, don't get sunshine, don't do all this, you always wear your mask. And I already knew masks don't work because I have some breathing issues as well, and I know if I put that on, I can't breathe as well. Like after 15 minutes, I'm getting dizzy. Like I can't wear them. So I started looking into it and looking at the research. Like these things aren't making sense. And that's kind of when I went down the rabbit hole of COVID and realized it's pretty much all a pandemic scam thing, just them trying to get people to go like comply, and that went on for almost a year before I got so fed up, because every time I was training with my clients outside in a public park at the calisthenics bars and gyms, pull-ups and all that stuff, they came up and they chained off the whole thing, the whole area with tape and whole chain linked fences, and then tied it with another chain and put a whole signs up saying you can't come out here, the COVID's locked down, all this stuff. And I was like, we're just trying to work out and stay healthy so we don't get sick. And they didn't even want us to do that. And it got so bad because we kept just like climbing over the fence and working out anyway, because we were like, this is stupid, that they kept bringing vans full of special agents with the little MP5 guns surrounding us and telling us if we don't leave, we're going to get fined or jailed or both, and get a bunch of penalties and all this stuff if we don't leave. So by that point, I got really sick of it, and I said, I sold everything. And like 2 weeks later, I flew back to America, Florida, with my dad. So that was my little taste of COVID in London.
So at least during that time, Florida was considered one of the more freer states in the United States. You were literally going from from one side of the
Yes.
plane to the other. I mean, it was complete. You must have been relieved when you landed in Florida. And
Yes, I was. It was pretty awesome. I was also the only person in the airport in London from Heathrow all the way to Miami airport, that whole flight, without a mask on, because I found myself how to get a medical exemption and wear a card and everything. And when I got there, everyone was just so shocked. They're like, you came without a mask? They're like, what? Where's your mask? I was like, no, I can't wear one. And they were like, the American security was like freaking out. But
you're going to kill somebody.
Exactly. But no, I didn't wear a mask ever. I didn't wear a mask over there. Didn't wear a mask on the plane. Didn't wear a mask at all. So yeah, that was at least it was really weird seeing it though, because I felt like I just felt like I was seeing loads of people's brains shut off, and they were down, going along, not wanting to get into any issues. And I was like, is anybody else like think this is stupid? Is it just me? Okay, I guess it's just me. Like, I'd say that on the middle of the plane when someone was asking me to put my mask on. I was like, I don't have one. I have to breathe. I can't do it. Like, it was so bizarre to me that time. Like, I have to remind myself sometimes that happened. It was only a couple of years ago.
I know.
It's crazy.
We actually I think March 11th was like the 6-year anniversary of the official declaration of a pandemic. And it's hard to believe because it seems just like yesterday. It's been 6 years. But then I'm like you, Matthew. I sit there and I shake my head. I go back every now and then on my other podcast, and maybe twice a year we'll play all those clips of just the most moronic things you'll ever hear. And people, when you walked into whether it was a Walmart or an Applebee's or whatever, and you didn't have a mask on, there was 80% of the people that just looked at you like you were coming in with a machine gun. But there was also another 15 or 20%. Every now and then you'd get that look and kind of the Chuck Norris nod, with the thumbs up, like, good for you. You're actually standing up. But it's amazing. They really, they knew what they were doing, and they do all of these things in order for a reason. And I'm kind of interested to see. I wrote a Substack. I also did a kind of an impromptu podcast last night. I do think the next lockdown is going to be a energy lockdown. I think there's going to be an intentional shortage of fuel. It'll start with, hey, you guys need to share no more than, there's got to be at least 2 people in a car and all this other nonsense. And then maybe it'll go to like back in the 70s. If you have a license plate that ends with an odd number, you can drive on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The even license plates Tuesday. Like, this happened in the 70s. You could only get gas on Tuesdays, Thursday, and Saturday if it was odd. If it was even, it was the other days. And, most of us who really woke up in 2020 thought that was really the start of this craziness. But then you turn around and look back, you do research. It's been going on since the dawn of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even with vaccines, I was really surprised when I looked in the history of vaccines that I found out, it wasn't just COVID. It was literally all vaccines, all the way back to the polio vaccine and earlier, where people were literally protesting and saying we don't want to do vaccines. And I was like, why are we not taught this? I was like, of course we know why we're not taught it, because then we'll be healthy and we won't be dependent on the government and et cetera, But it's crazy when you actually learn history, and just knowledge really does change everything, knowledge and truth. And that's what I've kind of based I started a YouTube channel recently. It's all based on knowledge, truth, and wisdom, those 3 things. Because the more you learn about anything and you keep striving to really find out the origins of something, you can figure out real quick whether it's true or false.
What's the name of your channel?
It's the Armed National. So yeah, it's basically been about guns and stuff so far, but I have recently uploaded a new series for my state citizenship journey and exiting the U.S. citizenship / 14th Amendment. That's pretty much a whole nother conversation, but I'm also going to start uploading some stuff on biblical cosmology. So it's kind of a place for guns, freedom, God, flat earth, and prepping. So that's kind of what I'm trying to create on that channel. Yeah.
Very cool. I just subbed to your channel. I'll make sure I put that in the show notes as well. I'm a fan of 22s. It's inexpensive ammo to fire at the range.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for sure.
Man, you really got me thinking, because I need to go back and address a lot of these. So, there was Eustace Mullins wrote a great book, and you can find it for free on archive.org. It's called Murder by Injection. Everybody should read that book. Back in the 1880s, speaking of England, there were mass anti-vaccination protests that took place in England. Like, how do you pronounce it? Is it Leicester? Leicester?
It'd be Leicester.
Leicester. Oh, of course. You already said that, didn't you?
You can say it however you want. You're American, man.
Because in Leicester, they had mandatory vaccinations almost 200 years ago. This is 1853, 1867. Yeah. This isn't anything new, what we saw in 2020. And there was another riot in Calais. Is that right? How you pronounce it?
Oh, I believe so. Yeah.
1876. They burned down half the town because they were pushing compulsory smallpox vaccinations. And then, of course, in American culture, what was it? Elvis Presley got his on, I think it was October 26th, 1950s. It was like Bill Gates' birthday, like the day he was born, if I'm not mistaken. And then I was watching an old Donna Reed show, the Dennis the Menace. They kind of had one of those shows where they cross. And he's like, oh, I just came in and got my shot. And they pushed this stuff in the 50s and 60s through pop culture to normalize it. And it's just evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I read somewhere the vaccination rate was so low, but when the stars of the time started doing it, because so many people would watch the TV and they listen to the radio, it jumped the numbers by like 40 to 50%, like really quick. So the influence is heavy on that. All that propaganda, it's obviously television, it's programming, but people don't really realize how deep it goes, because it goes back from the time of radio. The programming began with the radio, and then it would evolve to the TV. So it's been going on a long time.
Yeah, it really has. And Elvis, of course, was huge at the time. So when he went on TV and got his, everybody ran out and got it. I don't remember the numbers, and I'm not going to research it right now, but it was something, like you said, like 50 to 60% jump in just a couple of months.
Yeah, it's insane when you think about it, how easily manipulated we can become.
Backstage before his appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show, listen to this. This public act was aimed at encouraging teenagers to get vaccinated, as rates among the youth were at 0.6%. But within 6 months of that program, it was over 80%, man.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
That is astounding. And again, people need to stop paying attention. And I finally did too, right? Especially in my teens, it was Led Zeppelin and this and that. And they're just, man, look at those stars, not the ones on the TV. Look at the ones in the sky. Don't look at the stars on TV. That's incredible.
Yeah.
80%.
Yeah. I didn't think there was that high of numbers. That's actually insane. Yeah, that's a lot of money for sure right there that they made instantly. And that was back then. You can only imagine what they do today. Sure. They're getting I think it's in America by the age of 2, 72 different doses or something of vaccines for babies.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
and sad. Over half of the politicians denied it to push it forward to 18. Even though they say they're all about, health and everything, they're not, clearly. They're just what's in their pockets.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. So you've covered the gambit, and now you're wide awake, and I guess it's 2023, 2024. What brings you to Flat Earth?
Well, after veganism, I kind of went down that whole rabbit hole. I just started really questioning more stuff than what I was told. And I will say, as a big part of, I think, eating a lot of eggs and beef and stuff again, my brain just kind of lit up on fire, and I started to think for myself again. That was a big component of it. I was getting my cholesterol and saturated fat and all the stuff I didn't have for the longest time. I stopped drinking tap water, had everything filtered, started eating clean food, started working out more and better and getting in shape, and just mentally I was more focused. And over time, I would just dive into more conspiracies like 9/11, the fact that our government actually did that is still hard to come to terms with and understand. But when you understand the depths of how everything is connected and intertwined with everything, it makes perfect sense. But it led to a bunch of stuff, and NASA, the moon landing not being real, being a hoax, and I think probably around by like 2023, as you say, 2024, I had about probably 20 or 30 conspiracies studied and in depth in terms of everything. But flat Earth was always like in the back of my mind. Like, I've seen it, I've heard it. I was like, I don't really know about that. That seems a little too far fetched for me. But my friend from Canada, they're in Canada, and we know them from my wife when we used to live over there. He talked about it to me, and I was like, man, I don't want to talk about this. He's like, do we have to talk about this now? Like, he came and visited us in America. We had a whole week together. I was like, do we have to? I was like, okay, fine. You've been asking me for like a year. So I was like, show me the video. Show me something you want to show me. Of course, the video was like 8 hours long. It's like the lost history of flat Earth or something. We watched like a little bit every night. Yeah. But man, that was around the time when I kind of was coming back to God as well, and getting back into the Bible. And I was starting to realize a lot of the stuff in the Bible, like in terms of truth, I could really only trust what was in the Bible by that point. And this documentary was coming up with also some Bible verses and stuff in there. And I was like, there's no way. I've read the Bible like 3 times by the time I was 12 years old. Granted, I had no clue what I was reading by that point. But I went back in Genesis, sure enough, verses 1-6 says firmament like 5 times. I'm like, how did I not see this? So then I finished the documentary with him, and I was like, yeah, I think the earth is flat, but I'm going to have to check some things. And I did not sleep for like 3-4 weeks. I just studied every day, nonstop. Bible, collected a bunch of Bible verses in depth, like studied it, looked into everything. And ever since, man, it's been about probably almost 3 years. I'm like, yeah, I definitely know the earth is flat because the Bible says it is. And that's the only thing I trust by this point. So
I don't know if you heard the last podcast or two, but they had mentioned you go to whatever AI you use and just type in ask it to draw the Bible. What does the Bible think the earth looks like? And it was pretty amazing. It looks like exactly what we think it does. It's a firmament on foundations. It's really interesting. I showed my last guest, and all of a sudden I can't find it to save my life. I wanted to show you, but I don't have it in front of me. But the gentleman who said that, yeah, definitely. Everybody, I know a lot of people don't like to use it. I don't either, primarily. But it's if you just type it in on, here it is. I found it. I want to share this with you.
Earth is fixed and immovable. Number 1.
Here we go. Look at that.
Yeah.
On foundations, circle, firmament, sun and moon in there, and the waters above, etc.
Man, every time I see photos of the biblical kind of depiction of it, it just gets me a good feeling. I don't know why.
It really does. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. And the last gentleman I interviewed, that was Walt, he was saying, you think about it, when the sun gets, whether it's a quarter moon or a half moon, it looks like it's going back into something. Mm-hmm. It's not a shadow of the sun, or with how they say this, that's the sunlight and the earth is blocking it and all that nonsense. So it's good to hear somebody else's story was like mine. You were kind of jacked up for a few weeks and trying to process that. Like for me, it was I think I was disappointed in myself that I didn't pick it up, after 49 years. But I was, able to figure out all this other stuff like 9/11 and the Gulf of Tonkin and gone all the way back through history. But I refused to even listen to someone talk about that. And then it became just so obvious. Was that similar to you?
Yeah, I'd say I had quite a bit of frustration at first on one part of it. And the other part was just complete, just utter shock, I guess, because I couldn't understand how I went so far along in my life for like 30 something years and not even have given it the time of day or more than 5 minutes just to sit down and think about it. That's what really blew my mind. I was like, there is so much deliberate deception across so many different layers. The media, education, our schools, what we're taught, like everything, that I couldn't really quite grasp it in the beginning at first. That's why I didn't get it. But it was just like, once I kind of came to terms with that, it took me about a month because of just constantly reading the Bible over and over and over and looking at it, and then it kind of like made me really take a huge step back and see a lot of everything on this earth for what it actually was. And I would say for a fact, realizing that the earth was flat, it was pretty much the most important missing link for me that connected all my conspiracies together, and everything just like clicked just like that.
That's the one thing that I think all of us agree on. Once we saw through, the globe, we could pick up anything now. It's so easy to discern stuff now. So they'll come on the news and they'll look so serious and like the whole world's in peril, and you're just like, yeah, whatever, right? Back in the day, you'd just be glued and looking at the TV. And I wish I had this mindset going back to 2020 at the very beginning, because we eventually all did. Most of us did. The truthers did, and we said no thanks to the vaccine. But it was very divisive, and all of these things are meant to divide. I ask this question often, and I'm going to ask this to you. Actually, before I do that, let me ask you this. You've been married for, is it 4 or 5 years now?
4.5, almost 4.5, yeah.
You've been a flat earther for 2 years. So what does the wife think of all this?
Well, she learned the same time as me, because the friend that introduced it was, the husband of her wife, which is their friends.
Gotcha.
So it was kind of thrust upon us both. I dove into it heavily, way more than her. But yes, she also understands that the earth is flat now, and she believes in all of it and everything, and all the conspiracies are on the same level, same everything. So, praise God, that's all the same, because I don't know if I could do that if it was otherwise. But
yeah, that would be tough.
I know some people do, but, it's definitely a difficult thing to completely destroy your whole entire belief system and replace it with something that's actually the reality and truth, and not have that, shut your mind down. So to have a woman in my life that actually is able to do that, I've definitely been blessed for that, for sure. So
when you were going through your journey and you had that information thrust on you, was there one particular, do you remember, was there one particular piece of evidence that you thought, man, that closed the deal for you?
I remember one part during that the lost history of flat Earth. I can't remember what episode it was, which episode, but it was the part where they had this footage. You can't find it on YouTube now. They've scrubbed it all, but thankfully I have saved everything on a hard drive, so I have all the videos. But it's when the rocket was going up from NASA, and then it scraped across the firmament, and I saw that the whole split there. And I pieced it together with waters above and waters below from the Bible, and I was like, no way, that's the firmament I'm looking at right there. And they can't get through because it's impenetrable. Only God can open it. So it's like, that was probably, for me anyway, that when I saw that, I was like, I just couldn't believe it. I actually paused it, and I walked outside and looked up at the sky.
Really?
Yeah. So.
And that was the NASA, that wasn't the Go Fast rocket?
I'm not sure if it was NASA or the Go Fast rocket in particular, but I know it was one of the rockets that someone recorded, and it went up and it hit the part of the firmament.
Oh, here it is. And it looks like the water's, like somebody surfing
like
almost.
Scraping. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. I need to put this link in the show notes as well. Yeah, that's interesting. And it goes all the way back to, was it Operation Dominic, Operation Fishbowl, and they were trying to break through?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I still to this day, I think there's something more, much more deeper to World War II than what people led on to believe. I don't think it was a
Absolutely.
coincidence, brother, that Germany was in Antarctica prior to that. And then all of a sudden their technology, they went from being one of the poorest European nations, because remember the 20s, they were broke. There's pictures of people going down the street with, the Deutschmarks or whatever currency they were using at the time in wheelbarrows. They were devastated after World War I. Then all of a sudden, the Autobahn, the Volkswagen, and man, they're cruising, they're humming. And then, everything changed after World War II. Everything did.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either. I didn't know that there was a time that Hitler took like 30 something of his naval ships and went to Antarctica and came back years later stronger than ever before. I was like, wait, you told us all this about history of Germany and Hitler, but you never told us that he went to Antarctica and then came back later the strongest force that the world has seen like forever. I was like, why would they not tell us that? And obviously I think it is because there's a bunch of like renewable resources there.
Yeah.
So, there's a treaty, obviously. It was 1959, I think they made it. Was that correct? I can't remember, but yeah, no country can go there. So unless you're military or a scientific expert doing experiments or whatever, and you can visit the island off the coast, which is called Deception Island, of course. But,
And the Rothschild Island too, right?
Yeah.
No, it's just a coincidence. Yeah, you were right. December 1st, 1959 designates the entire continent of south of 60 degrees latitude as demilitarized. And it's, we're fighting over oil, the Straits of Hormuz, Russia, Ukraine. But when it comes to Antarctica, oh, no. We're all buddies. We all get along with that.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Have you had any luck? Obviously, like you and my journey sounds familiar. You get excited after all the turmoil and looking at yourself in the mirror. Like, am I really believing that it's flat? But when you get past that, and you get excited to talk about it. Did you try to share it with someone and kind of get rejected, like going up for a layup and Wilt Chamberlain rejects you?
I actually took probably a solid whole entire year first to really, really learn the in-depths of not only flat Earth, but also heliocentrism and all the data that NASA gives and the science and the curvature calculator.
Sides before you went out.
I'm a numbers guy.
There you go.
I learned my data, my numbers, their facts to a T before I brought it up with somebody. And then I started introducing it to people. And because by that point, I was like, I don't care what people think about me. I know this is how it is. And I want to try to insert seeds, gently. I tried a bunch of different methods. And I've kind of found just being straight up honest with people and not even trying to be it as a joke or anything, or don't sidestep, don't anything, flow it in with the conversation. Like if you're having a conversation about health, it immediately somehow diverts to like chemicals in the food, and then following the money from the vaccines and the Rothschilds, and then it goes back further, and then it goes to like the deceptions and then Freemason, Illuminati. Everyone's kind of on the same page with that stuff. But then you go, well, have you heard about, the moon landing being fake and not going on? I was like, yeah. I was like, okay, well, what do you think about, the Earth being flat and not being a round ball? And they like, go crazy. But I was like, okay, just tell me what you know about it. Just tell me how far away is the sun? Oh, I don't know. I just know that's pretty far. I was like, well, it's like, 96 million miles away or something like that. And do you know how fast we're spinning? And they're like, no, we're supposed to be spinning on an axis. I think it's like 23.4 or something at 1,000 something miles per hour. So when 1,000 minus that, it gives you 66.6 or whatever. That's your 666. And we're going like, what is it? We're flying 430 million miles with the Milky Way galaxy too, while it's ever expanding and moving constantly. But did you notice the stars were the same last night as like the night before that and the one before that and 1,000 years ago? And they're like, I don't know. We're just moving together, right? Like, I've always been a person who has to like be straight up honest with people. So if I feel like I've learned something, I want to really dive into it and really understand it. And then I want to share it with people. Everyone's different. So you kind of have to share it in different ways. But I've started sharing it with quite a few people. I've probably told about 20 people so far. And I will say at least half of them now believe the earth is flat. So I consider that a pretty good success rate so far. So
yeah, that is really good. And I'm a numbers guy too. And as far as the axis, I think it is 23.4. If you subtract that from a right angle, which is 90, that gives you your
yeah, that's it.
Your 66.6. And then I think, they say the sun is 93 million miles away. I think that's mockery because the Bible tells us that Adam was the first son, his first son, I should say. And Adam lived to be 930 years old. So there's your 93.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think a lot of it is mockery. A lot of it is, for those who have the eyes that can see. I think that's their kind of way of disclosure. It's interesting. There's so much, every number involved with heliocentrism is either involved in the occult or has a mockery of the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
I was just looking. How old was Eve in the Bible when she died? Genesis 5 noted the Adam's age, but it's not known. I didn't remember hearing about how old she was. Anyway. So, man, I'm looking at all the things that you emailed me, and I'm trying to, we'll definitely get back to Flat Earth, but there's something I really wanted to chat with you about a little bit. Because even on the Fact Hunter, I think I've had 2 people on in 6 years that have been subject matter experts on being sovereign citizens. Now, I don't have regular TV or YouTube or any of that, YouTube TV, cable. But on our YouTube, which we watch, whether it's sermons or, Flat Earth Dave, things like that, there's a like a police video channel that has the thing, and there's a lot of them that make fun of sovereign citizens. Like they pull them over and they mock them because they don't have a license plate. They refuse to, like, I've seen cops beat the ever living crap out of these people for not being willing to show a driver's license. It's kind of crazy, and for silly things like their taillight went out or something like that. And while the average person will mock the person for not being willing to comply, that goes all the way back to 6 years ago. And many people don't even know what their rights are, and they don't understand the depth of what a birth certificate is. And I'll let you explain if you'd like to.
Sure, it's definitely a humongous topic. So, I mean, if you want, we could also go more in depth on your other podcast for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to have you on and go full tilt on that at some point.
Yeah, but I'll try my best to summarize here. First of all, sovereign citizen is an oxymoron and it doesn't actually exist. So that's another thing that was pushed to, kind of discredit people who are saying they are sovereign, because we actually are all sovereign, but we don't say sovereign citizen. Basically, just a little quick history recap. Back in 1871, the entire United States government was federalized into a corporation, and we ended up going from like a de jure government, like private, into a de facto, into the public. And the de jure private still exists underlying. It's there because without it, we wouldn't even have our public government. But that's basically what's happened, and we're all living in the public, basically. And we're all corporations, trusts. That's how everything's operating, and we're operating under debt. And basically from 1871 up till now, we haven't even had a real president anymore. Every president from then past Abraham Lincoln is basically a CEO of the corporation Washington, D.C., District of Columbia, the 10 square miles. And that's how they get everybody to do things like pay taxes, follow their new policies or their mandates or whatever it is that they deem appropriate to, put out based on voting or not. It doesn't matter. It's totally irrelevant. Because you're an employee of the Washington District of Columbia, because you say you are when you get a birth certificate. And most people don't realize that when you are born, you first get a birth of record, and that is the actual document proving you're a living man or woman. And they take the birth of record, which has your baby's footprints on it and hands and everything, and they turn that into a long form birth certificate, which is still one of the best things we can get to prove that we're born on the land of sovereign land, because it shows the state you are from, and it shows the distinction that it's not from District of Columbia. But they take that long form birth certificate and they make a shorter copy of a short form birth certificate with more details on it, so it's smaller. And then they take that again and make another copy into a short birth certificate that they give you to go home with your baby. So you're left with a copy of a copy of a copy of the original. And then after 10 years, all hospitals in America destroy the birth record. So you can't get it unless your mother or your father requests it on the day that your child is born. Otherwise, you can't even get that original record. And that's how they loop you in, because they give you a social security number. It's attached to the birth certificate, which is attached to consider you a taxpayer. And that puts you in the whole system for everything. Because if you didn't have a social security number at any point, you would have been the most free person probably on this earth. So that's basically what I've been doing. And I've kind of corrected that with the status, my passport status. And I also don't pay federal taxes anymore because I'm not considered a taxpayer per the Title 26 of the Code of Federal Regulations for IRS. So everything's legal and lawful, but you have to do all the steps and pull yourself out of the system. And then you just live your life and you just don't comply to their fake warnings and stuff because it's all made up pretty much. That's, yeah.
So with that being said, does that also mean you pull yourself out of things like, say, Social Security and Medicaid and all these other things?
No, not necessarily. It gets complicated because the Social Security number is actually not ours. It's our sole proprietorships or our arms legis or our straw man. So a lot of people don't realize the Social Security number was created by the government. It's basically a government trust, and then they make us the beneficiary. So we can benefit from it because we have access to it because they gave it to us, but it's never ours. So we can use it if we want, but you don't have to use it. But if you're given one and you start using it, it's connected to your name. So then it's hard. You can't just, at that point, withdraw your consent from using it or paying into it. By that point, you have to basically work for yourself and keep your money that way. That's the only way to avoid it. So.
And this all came about from the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871?
Yes. Yeah, that's when it all started. People think Abraham Lincoln was a great guy, but he was actually one of the worst presidents in history. He basically made everybody equally a slave. The 13th Amendment was what saved everyone and made everyone free. The 14th Amendment made everyone equally a slave.
Yeah, people don't understand that he was, and even if you go to your whatever AI you use or Google, he was without a doubt the most tyrannical president ever. He threatened to throw a Supreme Court justice in prison. He illegally created, what was it, Kansas and West Virginia to help him get over the election hump in 1864. He shut down, and again, I'm just not sure about the number, but I want to say thousands of newspapers because they said bad things about, I'm talking about the North, obviously, the Union. And then New York had a huge riot because they didn't want to go off to war, like almost what you're going to see here in the near future. They're like, no, I'm not going to go fight my brothers and sisters down in Georgia, my cousins down in Georgia. It was, but you only get the Rockefeller version of Lincoln. And I remember I did that podcast 2022, I think, and all the hate mail I got. And then over time, people realize, I'm just telling you the truth, brother. It is what it is. There was 10 or 15 bullet points that just alone were incredibly tyrannical. I mean, just what we saw in 2020 was he was threatening to have the Supreme Court justice thrown in jail. And his federal marshal's like, I'm not doing that. Are you crazy? It was really interesting times. And then, of course, Reconstruction, 1871, everything becomes corporate. Even now, I'm at the point where I really doubt that the Founding Father story was for the betterment of this country. I think the Articles of Confederations were what should have gone forward because that kept the central government weak, incredibly weak. They no control over anything. And then the Constitution of 1787 overrode all of that.
Yeah, it's kind of I've realized that it's actually at times difficult to explain certain elements of truth or history to people, because when you realize how interconnected everything is, like you say, when you say, well, did you know this about Abraham Lincoln? They freak out. And in order to explain that, you have to explain other side tangents that connect that with why this person did this. And it just goes on and on and on. You're like, oh man, we really have to sit down and do this. Like, I've spent times with my good friend here. He's actually ex-Amish. I won't say his name, but he's ex-Amish, and we worked together for a year. And he's one of the first people I told that the Earth was flat. And he was like, "What? No way!" And I showed him the Bible, and he couldn't believe it because he's read it a bunch of times as well. But the amount of time it took, we'd sit down for hours and hours. I'm talking like all day long, and barely scratch the surface. And that's somebody who wants to learn. So it's very difficult to teach people these things for sure. And I think it just boils down to if they're ready or not, and if they're really willing to learn. It's the red pill or the blue pill. It's always what it's been.
I think what you touched on there is probably the most important part. If they're not willing to listen, if they're not willing to at least hear you out, then just save your oxygen, because they're just going to put up their deflectors and, oh, whatever. But it's interesting because, when I started doing the podcast, I'm doing research, and then, oh, wow, this connects to this. And then, a month later, you're doing something completely different. I'm like, oh, there's that guy. That guy was involved with this. And then it all, flat earth, then you're the Israel and everything else. And you really realize how little you learned in school.
Yeah, that one really, that one kind of touched a nerve for me, because I thought I knew a lot in my life growing up to that point before I realized the Earth is flat. And then I literally had to unlearn everything I learned and relearn everything and backtrack. I was like, surely this is fine. Nope, go back further. And it's just one thing after another. As I couldn't believe how much time and detail and planning went into all of this to deceive us. But I've come to realize that since Satan fell from heaven with his 200 angels, they don't sleep. They've been doing this for thousands of years, and they're a lot more powerful than humans. So, of course, they're going to be able to deceive us in all these different ways and do all this from the beginning. So it makes sense in that when you really think about it. So I stopped being so hard on myself and just try to take everything in as I can and make sure I always found my knowledge and truth from the Bible itself, because that guides me in everything I do. And the more I take my time on the Bible and biblical cosmology, what that tells me, the more my eyes open up in terms of everything else that I learned here. So
yeah, that's a great point. When I was doing my podcast early in, I was reading Bill Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse, Russ Baker's Family of Secrets, Manly P. Hall's Secret Teaching of All Ages, Fritz Springmeier's 13 Bloodlines of the Illuminati. And then the whole time, the Bible's sitting right in front of me. That's the book I should have been in. That explains everything. It really does. Psalm 118:8 says, don't put your trust in man, put your trust in the Lord. And that's what we should be doing. 2020 happens. What's the first thing we do? We look at people in lab coats. 9/11 happens. You look to the government, please save us. And then people forget about Daschle and the anthrax scare. Man, look how they rewarded him. I'm not going to talk about it, but pause the podcast for 5 minutes. Look how rich that guy got for playing along with the government. My goodness.
Yeah. And even the Bible says, one of the worst things that can be done to a human is when they're in a state of constant fear. Yeah. And the Bible says over 365 times, do not be afraid.
That's right.
That's the number one thing we should take for obviously, Jesus is king and the truth, but that's made very, very clear. We should not be afraid. It doesn't matter how much they try to ruin things or make us scared or put propaganda news that the whole world's going to blow up or a comet's going to hit us. Just don't be afraid. Just have trust in the Lord. Everything's going to be great.
That's an interesting sidebar there. Do you think nukes are real?
I've thought about this. I I don't think they're real in terms of the sense that we've been told what we think they are. I don't think they're that to that gravity for sure, because I don't think there's enough power for man to actually destroy the earth.
That's my thought.
I think that's only God who has the power to make that kind of destruction.
Yeah.
So there can be localized types of explosions, of course, but not to that scale and gravity. I really don't think so, because I've heard things, and I've heard some on your last podcast, previous ones, that it was kind of filmed and kind of staged and stuff. Like, there's other bombings in Pearl Harbor and things like that. No, not Pearl Harbor. What was it? The Tokyo ones or something.
Oh yeah, Hiroshima, Nagasaki.
Yeah. So I haven't really gone down that specific rabbit hole, but I just have a kind of a feeling we definitely don't have enough to destroy the world like 10 times over, like they say. I think that's nonsense.
I agree. It's more fear, like you just mentioned, right? They want to keep us in constant fear. So we depend on them.
Yeah.
How cool would it be if something happened and everybody ran down to the church and prayed instead of running to their state representative?
Man, we'd have a better country overnight for sure. That'd be something.
Yeah, but even with people, like, I mean, I'm in a church full of people. I'm probably the only flat earther. Maybe there's another one in there. To be fair, a guy did come up to me the other day. He's like, "Hey, did you know our currency is something called fiat currency? It's not even real." And I just smiled, put my hand on his shoulder. I was looking around. I'm like, "Yes, brother, you're right. It's worthless." He's like, "Yeah, it's worthless." I do think people are starting to realize the gravity of the lies of our government, and they are starting to look for alternative media. The problem is where they turn to. And I'm not saying like I'm the end all be all, but there are some pretty sus, truthers out there who are really looking for a quick buck and to put the fear out there. And, so I do think that's important as well. Try to steer people toward, people that are trustworthy. And number one, put Christ first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I've definitely noticed, it's hard for me to tell, because I think on one side, I think people have been waking up more than we've realized for decades, but you don't really pay attention until you've actually been woken up yourself, and then you start paying attention to everything around you and all the people being woken up with you. So for me, when COVID happened, I started noticing all these things, and then I started a lot of other people starting to notice them as well. And then it just seems like it's compounding for sure. Like, we're definitely at a time of the age of information, so to speak. And it can be tricky with AI and a bunch of different, propaganda. Google, these people own this, and the data goes here, and we're going to make sure he only sees this. We're going to censor this. You can't look at that. We're going to delete that. Get rid of that. But I know the truth. The truth is always brought forth to the light. And as the Bible says, I can't remember the exact verse, but we're supposed to shine a light on the darkness. That's shining truth on the deception and the lies, and it scatters. It just goes everywhere. So the more people wake up to everything, the more people are going to actually see the reality for the way the earth is, the way God made it, and the way everything's run.
Yeah, I think it's Ephesians 5:11 that talks about we're described as the light of the world, tasked to shine through the good works to glorify God. Before, I'm a little scatterbrained sometimes. Before we get back onto flat Earth, let me ask you this, when you did your research for Sovereign Citizens, was there a particular website or person or individual that you used to study this if somebody was more interested?
Yeah, I've got links to those. I'll send them over to you after this. Okay. For a long time, I did listen to Brandon Joe Williams. He's a little out there. He swears a lot, but his information is next level. I'm talking, he spends all day, almost what I think 24/7, looking into court cases, laws, all our constitutions, the history of America itself, where everything comes from, how it all pieces together. He went to the whole IRS code. He went into the entire Uniform Commercial Code. So if you want to learn actual stuff, you can go to his website, and you can sign up for his course, and it's completely free. He doesn't sell anything, which is another reason I liked him, because he gave information away for free.
Yep.
I could verify it. I could go look myself. I could go look on the United States Code, and it'd be like, it's right there. It's been there the whole time. Why do we not know this? So I would say him, and I'd also say Colonel Wilson. He helped me do the diplomatic passport process by getting that approved at the United States Department of State. So I have a new passport book and a new passport card, which I can use, and that's not connected to 14th Amendment stuff, which is pretty nice. And then one of my new favorites is Joe Lustica, and he has a Rumble channel, and he's more down to earth. He's a very good speaker, and he's been to court probably 30 times, and now the cops don't even mess with him in his automobile. He just drives free. So I'll give you all those links as well at the end.
Yeah, please do. I'm sure I found, he's got 11,000 followers. That's on Rumble at that. That's pretty good. Marriage is a state-controlled contract. It is interesting that everything is legal in this country. And what's his name? Is it not Jordan Peterson? Jordan Maxwell. Have you ever heard his take on the words? What is the name of that lecture he gives? How basketball court and how, words cut like a knife. And it's interesting that the word is in sword. What's the name of that speech? It's so good. It's about,
I can't remember, but I remember
maritime law speech. It's the maritime law speech.
Oh, yes.
Put in Jordan Peterson maritime law on YouTube. It's 14 minutes long, and it's awesome.
Jordan Peterson or
Maxwell?
Did you say Maxwell? Yeah. Jordan Maxwell. Okay, maritime law. Yeah, I'll definitely. Maritime law is basically what America is running off right now. So.
Maritime Admiralty law. There it is. Yep. He talks about birth certificates, the crown, which that's another question. Do you think we're really still part of London, the city of London, or?
I know that the corporate public United States is part of that, but the actual de jure private republic is not.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting conversation. And Brandon Joe Williams, I don't think he was on my podcast, but I definitely had somebody who mentioned him, and I subscribed to him. And the first newsletter I got is like, wow, because you do get one or two every single day. He never sleeps.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, let's get back into, man, you're kidding me. It's been an hour and 10 minutes. No way. Let me hear some of your bullet points that if you have if you're having a conversation with someone and you want to try to get your point across, what are your 5 or 6 most important?
Number one, because I've come back to Jesus, I'd have to say it's biblical cosmology shown to me in the Bible. So I know some books say there's like around 200. Some are kind of loose and vague. So I've kind of gone through a lot of them myself, and I found it was like 39 or 40 that are very, very in-depth and very clear, like without a doubt. Even if you follow the Masoretic text Hebrew, we didn't go into that. But even with their own deceptive Hebrew texts, it still says flat circle, and it's distinct from sphere. They use 2 separate words. So on that, my first silver bullet point is always, oh, you're a Christian? Let's go sit down. Let's read the Bible. Let's have a study Bible right now. Let's do it. And I show them this, and they can't believe it, what they're reading. And let me just pull my notes up
Yeah, and while you're pulling your notes up, do you have to take them to like Strong's Concordance, or is there a go-to verse? Obviously, Psalm 19:1, and obviously the firmament, Rakia, and those type of things. What's the best route that you found successful in kind of showing it? Is it more than Genesis, or?
I have about 6 different Bible translations right now. And it's through the years, I've come back for the Old Testament, at least. The Septuagint is in Koine Greek, and it predates the Masoretic text Jewish Hebrew by almost 1,500 years, because it was written in 234 BC. And basically, at that time, it's called Septuagint or LXX, the Roman numeral. It refers to the 70 most famous Jewish scholars at the time that wrote this, and they were the Jews of the people of Israel at that time, not the ones to be confused with today that are, separate from the people of Israel and then the Israeli government. They're a whole other conversation. But basically, the Jewish texts, the Hebrew ones that a lot of people read, and all these New King James versions that we all have, it's they're straight from Masoretic text Hebrew. They piggybacked off of Aramaic Babylonian Hebrew, so it's not even real Hebrew, because Paleo Hebrew is the ancient, the language of the ancients, and that's been a dead language since 500 BC. So I've collected a bunch of different Bible verses in the New Testament and the Old Testament, because obviously they prophesize each other from the Old being fulfilled in the New. And all the Masoretic texts, they remove and omit the body of Christ, his healing powers, his the angels, and they even add false prophecy. And we know from Deuteronomy, I think it's chapter 4, verse 2, if you add or take away his word, it's complete like heresy. And that's what they've been doing since 1300 BC. So I kind of went off on a tangent there.
No,
Sorry.
you're good. I'm so glad you brought that up. I want to ask you what you think of this. And, there's a lot of people who use the word Yeshua, but I always found it interesting that nobody's ever lost a job saying Yeshua. Nobody's ever got kicked off of PayPal. So I wrote it's actually coming out at 6 or 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. I already wrote it. And I'm not looking to like divide the truth community or anything, but I think it's important that the title is The Name the World Reacts to, Why Jesus Matters. And I talk about how a lot of people have been using Yeshua lately instead of Jesus Christ. And, number one, the New Testament, it's divine. It was divinely inspired in Greek, not Hebrew. And I'm not going to read the whole article here, but between every paragraph, mother says her 7-year-old son was written up for saying Jesus Christ at school, and there's a copy of it. Target apologized after employee says she was fired for writing trust in Jesus on her name tag. Philippians 2:10, that at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow of things in heaven and things in earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of the Father. So I wrote that, insisting that believers must say Yeshua risks reversing the very missionary spirit that marked the early church. It's just, I think we should say Jesus. What is your thought on that?
Yes, I actually went down that rabbit hole, and for sure we're going to have to do a whole nother separate podcast on that alone, because it is very intensive. But I've learned that, so Jesus is actually Koine Greek. The word J next to the vowel E it was an I in the old, right? In Koine Greek, it's an I, but if the I is next to the E, it makes it pronounced as Ja. So it's Jesus. So when we say Jesus Christ, we are saying one of the old ancient languages ever, and we're actually saying his name. Now, Yeshua and Yahweh, Adonai, Elohim, all of those, it comes from the Masoretic text Hebrew and the Tetragrammaton, and there are a bunch of false fake demons, basically. So I don't go down that anymore. I don't say that anymore. I've learned the distinction between those, and I really do firmly believe that that's what it says, because the older texts don't talk about that. They only say that he is the Almighty Father and Jesus Christ.
Yep.
And I think we're being deceived otherwise if we say otherwise. So I will link another YouTube channel I found. His name is Ben Born Again, and he goes into all of this, like hours of videos, has all the Bibles open, different text, goes step by step and gives you the translations. It's very, very awesome.
So I'm over the target with that article?
Yes. Right. Yeah, you hit it right on the head. So
good. I asked a couple people and they said, yeah, you're right over the target. Good. Because I think sometimes in the truther community, we can gravitate to something and just say, oh, that's cool, without really looking into it. And look, I'm not mocking anybody. I'm not saying that lightly. I've done it before. Some things that, and then I back up when I actually take the time to research it. I'm not mocking anybody. This is just what I believe. Because I think sometimes we are so deceived that, and we should look at every single thing. But I think we should also look at every single thing before we jump on it as well, right?
Yes, I definitely agree, because I was deceived by that. I was deceived by veganism, and I was deceived by the false names of Jesus as well for a time. And, just more studying and more looking at the truth, it brought me straight back to where I was supposed to be going. So
I want to ask you one more topic. We're going to close with flat Earth. The last topic I want to talk about, has to do with the Earth. And I think we mentioned this actually before we started recording, was that the government wants us to believe that they own everything. All the governments own everything, and it's our privilege to own property. How do we get people to unlearn all that nonsense and to stand in conviction that we shouldn't, after we spend 30 years of our life paying off our mortgage, have to rent our property, that we should be able to pass on to our children and grandchildren like it was, I think, was it pre-1871 there was no type of property taxes, or was that all kind of instilled state by state by state? I've never really, and it's crazy, I've never looked into the history of it. Have you? I mean, I've written about it, but I've never really gone back and looked at the history when it all started.
The country pretty much went downhill since 1871, and then even faster downhill from 1913 in the Federal Reserve, because they're closely linked.
Yeah.
1871 was a setup for the Federal Reserve to control the currency, and then 1871 controlled the policies and the laws and everything. And now we're where we are today because we don't, people aren't standing up for the rights. So that is one thing that's difficult to fight, because as it stands right now, I think in pretty much all 50 states, if you don't pay your property taxes, they seize your property. Even if you're on paper and everything a state citizen and you're totally sovereign and everything, they don't care. So I think that's something that's it's going to have to be a bridge that needs to be crossed in the future if it ever gets to that point. Like, people are going to have to just stand up and say, we paid for this is our land, and they're going to have to actually use the Second Amendment. I don't condone violence for any reason, but when this is there needs to come a point that, we're going to lose everything if we don't do anything. It really does boil down to that. So
there's no other property that we own that once we pay it off, we continually have to pay. Like, I mean, you pay off your car, you still have to pay for insurance, but you don't pay an annual tax to say, I mean, I guess in a way you could kind of say like the inspections and driver's license play a part of that.
Yeah. Registration, yearly registration.
Dude, when I moved here from Texas, I paid $1,200 to register my truck and $800 to register my wife's. $2,000 for what? To get a new license plate? Why do they charge? It's insane.
Yeah. It's all money, and I've realized, because most money it's basically all fake and meaningless.
Yeah.
It's not really money.
Debt.
It's control. It's to keep you under control and keep your resources low, and you're constrained, and you have to listen to what you're told. Otherwise, you're going to be homeless. So that's basically what they're trying to get everyone in their head. They don't realize that God gave us everything. This is all here for us. We're supposed to be utilizing the earth and the ground and the food and the vegetables and the cattle and the feed, and working together in a perfect harmonious symbiosis. But the government came along and just said, no, you have to do it this way, and you have to pay for things that are free. You're not allowed to collect rainwater from the sky.
Isn't that insane?
Yes, and I thought about that, and I think the reason why is because they have patents on weather geomodification. So the rain that's dripping is the one that they're making. So technically, it's theirs. That's what I was thinking. But obviously, they just don't want anyone to be free at all. So.
No, they don't. Wow. Well, it's been an incredible 90 minutes. But before we go, I always like to give our guests the last word. But I'd also like to share. I'd like you to share your thoughts on any successes you've had. Do you believe in? And again, everybody's different, so there's no one answer. Do you believe in the breadcrumbs, or do you believe in, what is your way of educating people? What successes have you had? And in the realm of truths outside of, our Lord and Savior, He is the way, He is the truth, He is the life. But where does biblical cosmology fall in the aspect of all the truths?
I'm a big people person. I like to listen before I speak. So I try to read people's energy and their language and their, what I think would resonate with them. So I think sometimes I'll use breadcrumbs. Sometimes I'll just smack it right in their face. Like, sometimes you have to do, it just depends. But in terms of biblical cosmology, I've come to realize it is the most important thing to bring someone to Christ or back to Christ, or connect all the dots. Obviously, the only thing that really matters for eternal salvation is believing Jesus is King and living the truth, and that's the life you need to live, and you need to share that message. But there's something about biblical cosmology when you actually understand it, the actual, I was going to say the gravity of the situation, but this when you actually think about it, it connects everything, and it's awesome just to realize like that Jesus is not millions of miles away.
Yeah.
You can walk outside at night and look up at the polar North Star and realize he's there sitting on the throne looking down at you and everyone else. Like, that to me was a massive realization.
It is.
And I think the fact that the government and societies and culture, they try to suppress the truth of the shape of the earth so much, it tells me that's just how much important it actually is into people finding the truth in Jesus.
Man, that's really well said. And it's okay. I said planet, you said gravity. Penalties offset, first down.
Yeah.
Good thing. Man, that was such an awesome podcast. I will definitely get you on the schedule for the Fact Hunter, because I could talk ad nauseum about how our freedoms have been hijacked. I always say I feel like we live in an open air prison. If you tell someone they're free, but they're walking around with all these rules and regulations, if you step outside of this boundary, you have to do this. If you want to step outside this boundary, you have to do that. Are you really free?
Exactly. That's why certificates, registration, permits, if you look in the Black's Law dictionaries, they are expensive to buy, but they're worth it. It basically is saying permission to do something that's otherwise already would have been a right. So you're trading your right for a privilege. You're not even thinking about what you're doing, but you're giving up something that was already free.
Yeah, I think you can get on eBay and get those. I mean, they're huge. They're like 3 Bibles almost. That's how big they are. But Black's Law Dictionary is, I mean, look, if you wonder why every politician, not every, but probably 90% of politicians are lawyers, that's why. And they know how to sneak in the Patriot Act, right? Oh, you don't like the Patriot Act. Are you a commie, right?
Yeah.
They're wordsmiths, for sure. Well, listen, brother, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to chatting with you on the other podcast. Anything else you wanted to add before we close?
I would just like to say thanks for having me on, and if you don't mind, I would say just a quick prayer.
I'd love that. Go ahead, bud. Sure.
So, dear God, thank you for this time we've had on this podcast together to share truth, knowledge, and wisdom. May anyone who's listening to this podcast just help their eyes to be opened and their ears to listen, and to help them bring you to the truth and to discover your awesome creation of biblical cosmology. And in your name, Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for that. And, whether it's a loved one, a friend, someone at church, be patient, understand, if they're 50 years old, they've had 50 years of propaganda put in their eyes, and it takes a long time to peel it back. Like Matthew said, listen to them, understand where they come from, and work from that angle, and just preach the truth, show them the Bible, and you can't go wrong. So this has been awesome, Matthew. Thanks again for your time. I look forward to doing this again on The Fact Hunter. And to all the listeners, thank you for your continued support. If you'd like to join us and share your story like Matthew did today, please send us an email. That is fefilesguest@gmail.com. Again, that is fefilesguest@gmail.com. And this is going out Thursday, so I'm looking at KDP right now. The paperback that we wrote should be going live hopefully in the next 24 hours, but I'll announce that. It's called You Are Not Who You Were. Here it is. I have the book right here, the rough copy. A Guide for New Believers. And we wrote a 5-part series called Foundations in Faith. And it's for new believers, because I think one of the biggest issues we have is we save someone, and that, great, we're saved, and then we kind of neglect them. And that's kind of the reason we're in the situation we are now. I think people need direction and discipleship, and I'm hoping this series helps people. It's kind of a crawl, walk, run type of series. So the first book is very simple, very easily written, anybody can digest it. But the whole meaning is to bring somebody along. You don't want to save somebody and hand them 783,000 words and say, here you go. They really need mentoring and discipleship, and I hope this series will do that. I'll announce more a little later. But for Matthew, I'm George. God bless each and every one of you. Keep your head on a swivel and Christ in your heart. And until we meet again, my friends, we will see you.